is Kevin Murphy from Riff Tracks and Mystery Science Theater 3000, and you are listening to Dispatch Radio.
Folks, we have a guest with us, possibly one of my favorite shows of all time. I have such an addict, as we've talked about. We've interviewed several of the cast members, and we have a great opportunity to talk to a man who's not only part of the show, he is a godly man, and he has a great book talking about his life. It's called Blindsided by the Walking Dead. Welcome, IronE Singleton, with us. IronE, how are you, my friend?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure to finally get a chance to catch up with you and talk to T-Dog personally. It's quite an honor, and a big fan. And let's jump right to this book. I know it's out on Amazon, Blindsided by the Walking Dead. And, you know, you really open up about your childhood here and coming out of just really the hood, for lack of a better term here. Give everybody a little insight on what that part of your life was like and what they'll expect from those pages.
Yeah, and I thought it was perfect phrasing for coming out of the hood, and that's exactly what happened with me and my life. I basically became a product of my environment. Growing up in Atlanta, a housing project there called Perry Homes, which at the time, I was a child back in the '80s and the '90s. It was considered the worst, probably the worst housing project in the Southeast, if not the entire country. And there was that was the peak or the explosion of the drug epidemic, and I basically emulated what I saw. I grew up in a home with literally pimps and hustlers and gangsters and even worse, even worse things than that perhaps. And I had limited interaction with my father. I saw him 2 times in my life.
Wow.
I saw him at the age of around 7, and then I saw him again around the age of 11. And my mother, she was addicted to crack, and she was an alcoholic. I lost her at the age of 18 from HIV complications, just like an uncle of mine and a few cousins and several friends. They died from HIV complications or senseless violence. I had best friends of mine coming up to have their brains blown out, and my brother at the age of 14, he was entered into the penal system, and he's been in and out of the correctional facilities ever since the age of 14 for the past 20 plus years. He's a couple of years older than I am, and through God's grace and guidance and favor, I ended up at the University of Georgia. And I played Division I football, which was a saving grace for me, playing football, because it served as my outlet, my catharsis. And I had hopes of playing in the NFL, which is the reason why I continued to strive to work hard on the field in high school. But it at least got me a college education. And I double majored in theater and speech communications. Graduated, went to L.A. for a spell. Worked a couple of jobs waiting tables and struggled there for a while. Nothing happened. Moved back to Atlanta, where I worked about 15 trillion jobs. I did everything from I waited tables here in Atlanta, of course. I did costume work. I was the mascot for the Braves. I did mascot work for the Hawks, for the Atlanta Thrashers when they were here in Atlanta. I sold long-distance services. I sold biweekly mortgages. I did corporate functions where I did costume work. Like I was Scooby-Doo, and I was even Judy Jetson.
Oh my gosh! T-Dog moonlighted as Judy Jetson, folks. You heard it here right on Dispatch Radio. We got the truth. From Boys in the Hood to Judy Jetson, the life of IronE before Blindside and Walking Dead.
Right.
Oh man, Betty and Judy. Right. Oh, wow.
And Wilma Flintstone.
Right.
So I worked all those jobs. I worked at Subway for maybe 13 years. I started working at Subway at 14. I started working at the age of 11 and selling candy on the streets and hustling that way. And then I started at Subway at the age of 14 and worked there until my late 20s, I guess. And I finally eventually wrote a play entitled IronE the Resurrected. And it depicted my life story from overcoming so many trials and tribulations achieving ultimate success. When I say ultimate success, I mean the spiritual success, and other stuff started to flow from there.
Who took you? Who's responsible for that invite? Who's the one that got you into the right church Bible study moment that God got a hold of you and gave you the clarity that you needed to seek Him?
I'm going to tell you, everybody had a hand in it, whether it was negative reinforcement or positive reinforcement. But I learned from negativity that I saw around me. I learned to not do certain things. I learned things that would actually ruin my life. But this particular case, the two times I met my father, the one thing that he did with me that was so great was he introduced me to his mother and his sister, my grandmother and my aunt. And I would go to church with them from the age of 8. That's when I was introduced to them. From the age of 8 all the way through to my 13th year, I went to church with them probably like every Sunday during the summer. I was over there a lot. And then I spent a lot of weekends over there too. So I just couldn't get enough of that place because it was so unlike the project. Because the grass was cut, it smelled good, and the kids were different. And when I say different, I mean that things didn't lead to an altercation so quickly.
Yeah.
It was just about playing and having pure, clean, unadulterated fun. But in the projects, I guess given poverty, when you're dealing with poverty and you don't know where your next meal is coming from, and you're lacking education, and a lot of stuff is being passed on to you, and a lot of negativity being instilled in you, seems like a lot of the times the slightest disagreement would lead to a fight. And that's what I appreciated about going over to my grandmother's and my aunts, was that we just had fun and we were able to be kids. So I went to church for about 5 years straight and on a regular basis, and I was exposed to God and religion and spirituality from those ages, and it stuck with me. But if I may say this, even in my household back in the projects, that's what my family. My grandmother always instilled that. She instilled loving and respecting everybody. My uncle being kind to people, respect people, they'll respect you back. So it's not like I really came into the knowledge of God and having a relationship with God at the age of 8. It was before that also, but just in the household, not at a church.
We're talking to IronE Singleton about his incredibly inspiring autobiography. It's called Blindsided by The Walking Dead. Definitely a play on words from his 2 big projects that are already under his belt, The Blind Side and, of course, playing T-Dog on Walking Dead. And, IronE, when you got that role on Blindside, I mean, is it just the dream come true to get to do something that you just have always loved to do? I mean, how was your mindset? What is your reaction like?
My reaction, aside from the initial outburst of joy and elation, I must tell you that I had that moment because that was my first big project.
Sure.
That was the one that gave Hollywood an opportunity to see my talent, and it opened other doors after that. But I felt like it was a long time coming because I had been acting for 15 years prior to. So I wasn't surprised. I was just like more so relieved, like finally, oh my goodness. I would have acted until I was 75 years old. I had done lots of theater, and that's one of the things I left out, Brandon, was I always did theater all the way through all those jobs I worked. I was constantly doing plays, and I guess I left it out because I wasn't getting paid much of anything, if anything at all. I did plays. I work on plays and shows for 3 months and not get paid a penny. And there were a lot of shows I did. I got maybe a $50 or $100 stipend. And this is when gas was $4, $5 a gallon. Where are you right now?
Yeah, I'm down in Tampa. We get a little bit of a break on that, but I definitely remember what you're talking about here, where you're making $100 on a pseudo volunteer job that don't even pay your gas to get through a month's worth of the obligation.
Exactly. So I was doing that the whole time, and eventually, I got that big break, and I was relieved, and I said, finally, the opportunity's come. So now let's see because I was so faithful, and I've been that way ever since my mother died. That's when my faith went into overdrive. When I was 18 and my mother died, I was on my knees and praying and asking God to just kind of set me free, basically. And when I say set me free, meaning like, take me out of this life. I didn't want to live anymore because I had already dealt with so much in such at such a young age and in such a short lifetime. I was like, I just don't want to do it anymore. I said, well, God, just tell me, if I'm meant to be here, if there's any meaning to my life, please let me know. Let me see the light. And at that moment, a car came around my corner, and its headlights shone through my window and reflected off my wall, and my whole room just lit up. It was like this bright light, like a comet had just burst through my window, and it was incredible, and it was amazing. And I knew at that time that what I was here for, and God told me then that I had a purpose for being here, in addition to making sure that my mother's life was not lived in vain, because I know that, God didn't create us to just come here to be an alcoholic or to be a crack addict. There's more to it than that. So I had to make meaning of her life as well as mine, and a slogan that I received through God was, purpose in life is to help others search for theirs. And knowing that we will find ours. And that's exactly what this life is all about. And that's how I get my fulfillment in helping and serving as motivation for others, and helping to put them on God's path.
This is what you're going to get from the pages of Blindsided by the Walking Dead. IronE Singleton sharing just an incredible faith-filled journey through his acting career, his theater work, multitude of jobs, and we're never going to forget about his Scooby-Doo days. When you get to play, T-Dog, and obviously everybody we've interviewed talks about, nobody knows, obviously, the show's going to be this kind of success. This is a historical thing at this point. But looking back, you guys don't know that. When you're there and you're playing this, you got incredibly emotional scenes with Michael Rooker, Norman Reedus, and that kind of thing. So what was the first part of the fan reaction or your family's reaction or whatever that kind of gave you to know, wow, this could be something special?
I think that the number 6 million plus, that's what we debuted at 6 million viewers.
Yeah.
And that was twice the number of AMC's marquee shows. At that time, they were Breaking Bad and Mad Men.
Right.
And their numbers were maybe around 3 million, possibly 4. But I'm thinking around 3 million, and we did 6 million, and then it started to go up from there. So I knew from that point that we had something special, but I didn't know that we had something 20 million viewers, worth 20 million viewers special. It just kept rising. We got 6 million, then we were at 7, 8, 9, 10. It just kept going. It wouldn't stop. I was like, this is amazing.
When you have these scenes, and obviously racism plays into some of those scenes, obviously with Michael Rooker's character and the screaming back and forth with T-Dog and some of that stuff, I mean, you're really tapping into some of your background here, man. You're kind of tapping into those roots back in Atlanta in your childhood. And how did you kind of, deal with that a little bit? And then also, cut, I know it's a job, but man, tempers get high when that kind of stuff's happening, brother.
Yeah. Oh, Merle Dixon. Now, I've had sit-down discussions with former racists. When I was at UGA, I had a friend of mine, a fellow classmate, student, to come to me and say, and he told me that he used to be a racist. And he said that when he met me, I changed his perspective. Wow, that touched me. I hadn't said that in a while, but yeah, he was like, he grew up because that's what he learned. He learned racism. We learn racism. It's not something that you're born with. A newborn baby is just so innocent.
Yeah.
And it's not thinking about it like that. A newborn baby is full of love and joy and so many other positive attributes. But he said, man, before I met you, he said, I carried the big, we had the big rebel flag, and not that that's symbolic of racism, because I learned from him. Other people that I converse with, it's symbolic of appreciation. And there's a fine line there, and I respect that. Some people, like you may have some black people that don't respect it because only thing they see with the rebel flag is racism. But then the people that come from that background, I think that, there could possibly be a certain type of sensitivity exercise to where we could kind of understand where each other's coming from, which is what prompted me to do a movie. In that whole spell where I was a struggling actor, I did a movie before I did my one-man show, and it's entitled White Man, Black Man, Jew Man. And the plot is about a Confederate flag being hung up. The two main characters, a white guy named Seaman and a black guy named Revo. And they have the discussion about the rebel flag being up and what it symbolizes and everything like that. And ultimately, the theme of it is we can't solve any problems without communicating. We have to communicate first, and we'll realize that we're much more alike than we are different. So I had to, jumping back to my time at the University of Georgia, when he told me that, I said, power is in communication. If we just took the time to just listen to each other and talk to each other as opposed to talking through each other, as opposed to focusing on what we're going to say, and as opposed to that, and just say, let me listen first before I respond, I think the world would be a much better place. So I didn't get emotional up there on the rooftop because I'm like, this is a scene. I'm an actor. I did tap into certain moments where I experienced racism because I know that, in college, and I talk about it in my book, where one of the students called me, and it seemed like there were other guys in the background. It could have been, some guys from a frat, could have been guys that lived on my hall, but they called me used all kinds of racial epithets to describe me, and they used the most hateful language, and that upset me. And so I tapped into that moment, but then I caught myself, and it was a learning experience again. It came back to, okay, they don't know the effect that has on me. And they were probably drunk that night too, because it was a Saturday night as well. So I tapped into that to do that same. But when the director says cut, it's cut.
It was great stuff. It is amazing, and you definitely want to get your copy of Blindsided by The Walking Dead and learn more about the incredible journey of IronE Singleton. Blindside, Walking Dead, yeah, you know that, but what you don't know is this incredibly long journey, rising out of the hood, and an incredible faithful journey, dependence on God, and just doing what you got to do sometimes to survive is all definitely been on IronE's lips this morning, and we appreciate his time to do the interview, and wish you the best of luck, my friend.
Thank you, Brother Brandon. And I want to encourage your listeners to go to either, because even if they're not dealing with something, but I know we as human beings, we all deal with something every now and then in life, but if you want to help touch somebody else's life, please go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble to get the book. If Barnes & Noble doesn't have it, then they'll be gracious enough to order it for you. Go to my website, IronESingleton.com, and you can also learn about the one-man show, which is an abridged version of the book told on the stage, and I played 20 different characters. It's a really great show. And investors and sponsors, if you want to be a part of something great that I feel and that God has told me will change the world for the better, please go to my website as well.